Back in 1947, Britain is bankrupt. The nation that once ruled half the world now survives on American loans and food rationing. The war has been won, but peace is proving almost as difficult. And in a factory in Coventry, a group of engineers is about to bet everything on a car named after a warship. The Standard Vanguard. You may not recognize the name today, but between 1947 and 1963, this unassuming British sedan became one of the most important export weapons in Britain's economic recovery. While flashier names like Jaguar stole the show, the Vanguard did the heavy lifting, crossing oceans, conquering Commonwealth markets, and keeping Standard Motor Company employees employed during Britain's most desperate peacetime. But here's what makes this story worth telling. The Vanguard wasn't just another post-war sedan. It was Britain's first completely new car project after World War II, deliberately designed for a global market that Standard had never seriously considered before. No reusing components from the pre-war period. No half measures. Just a completely new design, aimed directly at Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, Canada, and anywhere else where they drove on the left and spoke English. In 1947, the British government wasn't asking nicely, it was demanding. Want steel to build cars? Then 75% of your production goes overseas. No exceptions. It was export or die, and the Standard Motor Company chose to fight. They named their new car after HMS Vanguard, the last and largest battleship ever built by the British Royal Navy, launched in 1944. The symbolism was perfect. Both Vanguards represented the end of an era and the hope for something new. This is the story of the forgotten king of British exports, a car that never broke speed or elegance records, but may have done more for Britain's balance of payments than any sports car ever built. PHASE1, the post-war gamble and the beetle-back pioneer. To understand why the Standard Vanguard mattered, you need to understand just how desperate Britain was in 1947. American Lend-Lease was abruptly terminated in August 1945. Food rationing actually got worse after the war. Bread was rationed for the first time in 1946. The new Labour government faced a simple equation: export or face economic collapse. Standard Motor Company, based in Coventry, had survived the war building military vehicles and over 1,000 Mosquito aircraft. When peace came, they resumed production of pre-war models that were already looking dated, but managing director John Black had bigger ambitions. In 1945, Standard purchased the bankrupt Triumph Motor Company for £75,000. They also secured a contract to build Ferguson tractors, which would prove crucial to the Vanguard's development. Black understood that Britain's export drive meant opportunity. The Vanguard was designed from 1945 specifically as a world car for Commonwealth markets. Chief stylist Walter Belgrove created a design with American styling cues that would appeal to export customers who admired American modernity but needed British practicality. The car was announced in July 1947, with first public appearance at the Brussels Motor Show in February 1948. Production began mid-1948, but every single car built during the first 2 years went overseas. British customers wouldn't see significant deliveries until 1950. The Phase I featured distinctive beetleback fastback styling resembling the 1942 Plymouth. Soviet media later claimed similarities to their Gazem 20 Pobeda, though both likely reflected international styling trends of the period. The design featured a horizontal grille, headlamps fed into front wings, and a smoothly integrated rear end with the fastback culminating in a rounded tail. Mechanically, the Phase I was thoroughly modern. The 2.088 cubic centimeter four-cylinder engine featured wet cylinder liners, the same technology used in Ferguson tractors. This wet liner design proved remarkably durable and later powered Triumph TR sports cars. The engine used an 85mm bore and 92mm stroke with a single Solex downdraft carburetor. Early versions ran a compression ratio of 6.7:1, producing 68 brake horsepower at 4,000 revolutions per minute. The car used a conventional separate chassis with independent front suspension using coil springs and a live rear axle with semi-elliptic leaf springs. Lockheed hydraulic brakes with 9-inch drums provided stopping power. A column gear change maximized interior space in the four-door body. Dimensions were generous: 13 feet 8 inches long, 5 feet 9 inches wide, wheelbase of 7 feet 10 inches. Unladen weight was 2,716 pounds. Original UK price was £544, rising to £658 with purchase tax. The export focus paid immediate dividends. Australia became Standard's most important overseas market. In 1950, the Australian subsidiary introduced a coupe utility version. This ute became an Australian icon, giving farmers and tradesmen cargo capacity with car-like comfort. In West Germany, Standard recorded 405 sales in 1950, making it Germany's third most popular imported automobile. Vanguard sales represented over 70% of all British cars sold in Germany that year. However, early cars had quality issues. Swiss importer AMAG reported numerous defects. They persuaded Standard to allow Swiss assembly starting in 1949, with better quality control than British-built examples. These problems reflected broader issues in British manufacturing factories recovering from wartime conversion, skilled worker shortages, and material limitations. Total Phase 1 production from 1948 to 1953 reached 184,799 units, remarkable for a brand new model during Britain's austerity years. PHASE2, refining the formula with the notchback design. By 1953, the Beetleback styling was dating. Customer feedback highlighted practical concerns, limited trunk space, and poor rear visibility. Standard responded with the Phase 2, shown at Geneva Motor Show in March 1953. The Phase 2 was extensively redesigned while retaining proven mechanical components. The distinctive fastback was replaced by a conventional 3-box notchback design. This increased trunk capacity by 50% and significantly improved visibility with a larger rear window. The decision to abandon the fastback wasn't easy, but practicality won. Owners complained about luggage space on long journeys. The sloping rear window restricted reversing visibility. By 1953, fastbacks were falling from fashion. The ponton design made entry easier with longer front doors. Mechanically, compression ratio increased to 7.2 to 1, and the clutch changed from cable to hydraulic operation. Interestingly, the anti-roll bar was deleted, though wider 6.00 by 16 tires improved road holding. Suspension was stiffened, though handling remained, as road tests noted, not a Vanguard strong point. The Motor magazine tested a Phase 2 without overdrive and recorded 80 miles per hour top speed with 0 to 60 acceleration in 19.9 seconds, marginally quicker than Phase 1. The Phase 2 continued export success. Swiss assembler AMAG built Phase 2 Vanguards locally with superior quality to British examples. In Australia, utility production continued with styling updates in 1955, creating extra cargo room. Phase 2 production, from 1953 to 1956, totaled 81,074 units, solid sales during increasing European and Japanese competition. PHASE3, the monocoque revolution and performance variants. The Phase 3, released for mid-October 1955 British International Motor Show, represented the most radical change. Standard abandoned the separate chassis, embracing modern monocoque construction. The transformation was dramatic. The unitary body was significantly lower and more modern, with a curved, single-piece windscreen. The wheelbase grew by 8 inches to 102.5 inches, matching rivals like Vauxhall Velox and Ford Consul. With British fuel no longer restricted to 72-octane pool petrol, compression ratio increased to 7.0 to 1. The 2.088 cubic centimeter engine with single Solex carburetor produced 68 brake horsepower at 4,000 revolutions per minute. Monocoque construction meant the Phase 3 was lighter, allowing taller gearing that improved performance and fuel economy. Front suspension remained independent with coil springs bolted to a subframe carrying recirculating ball steering. Semi-elliptic leaf springs continued at rear. Lockheed hydraulic brakes with 9-inch drums were fitted. The range expanded significantly. In October 1957, the Standard Ensign was announced, sharing the Phase 3 body but with a smaller 1,670 cubic centimetre engine and simplified trim. Many Ensigns were bought by the Royal Air Force. Total Ensign production reached 18,852 units before 1961. Most exciting was the Vanguard Sportsman, announced August 1956. It featured a tuned 90 brake horsepower engine with increased compression ratio to 8.0 to 1, twin SU carburetors, and improved pistons. Final drive ratio was lowered to 4.5 to 5 to 1 for better acceleration, with larger 10-inch brake drums. The motor tested a Sportsman with overdrive in 1956, recording 90.7 miles per hour top speed and 0 to 60 in 19.2 seconds, genuinely brisk performance. The test car cost £1,231, including taxes. 962 Sportsman models were built. Phase 3 production from 1955 to 1958 totaled 37,194 units, plus 901 Sportsman variants and 18,852 Ensign models. PHASE 4, the Vignale facelift and final evolution. In October 1958, Standard introduced the Vanguard Vignale, styled by Italian designer Giovanni Michelotti and coach builders Vignale. Really a Phase 4, it featured larger windows, new grille, and revised rear lights. Visual changes were subtle but effective. Floor-mounted 4-speed gearbox became standard, with column shift optional. Overdrive and automatic transmission remained available. Interior trim improved with better upholstery. A heater and electric windscreen washers were factory-fitted. The motor tested a Vignale with overdrive in 1959, recording 82.8 miles per hour top speed, 0 to 60 in 20.8 seconds, and 28.0 miles per gallon fuel consumption. The test car cost £1,147, including taxes. Production from 1958 to 1961 totaled 26,267 units. By this point, modern competition from Ford, Vauxhall, and British Motor Corporation exposed dated underpinnings. In 1960, Leyland Motors acquired Standard Triumph after financial struggles triggered by government credit squeeze. The acquisition accelerated phase-out of aging models. The final variant appeared late 1960, the Vanguard 6. It featured a new 1,998 cubic centimetre inline 6-cylinder engine, producing 80 brake horsepower at 4,500 revolutions per minute. This engine later powered the Triumph 2000. Compression ratio was 8.0 to 1 with twin Solex carburetors. The motor tested a Vanguard 6 in 1960, recording 87.2 miles per hour top speed, 0 to 60 in 17.0 seconds and 24.9 miles per gallon. The test car cost £1,021, including taxes. Vanguard 6 production from 1960 to 1963 totaled 9,953 units. Both Ensign and Vanguard were replaced in 1963 by the Triumph 2000, ending the Standard name after 60 years. In Australia, production continued slightly longer, with utilities produced until 1964. PHASE 5, the export legacy that changed Britain's fortunes. The Standard Vanguard's significance lies not in performance records but steady export success during Britain's most difficult peacetime years. Over approximately 350,000 total production across all variants, the Vanguard punched above its weight in export markets. Australia became the Vanguard's spiritual home. Rugged construction, generous interior, and powerful engines suited Australian conditions perfectly. Locally produced utilities became workhorses on farms and construction sites. The Royal Australian Air Force purchased significant numbers. The Australian market reveals how well Standard understood colonial needs. Australia's post-war boom brought immigration and transportation demand. Vast distances, rough roads, and extreme climate made it a proving ground. American cars dominated prestige markets but were expensive and thirsty. British cars offered economy but lacked robustness. The Vanguard hit a sweet spot. British engineering with American-inspired styling and an engine tough enough for outback conditions. New Zealand presented unique challenges. Mountainous terrain, winding roads, and variable weather demanded different qualities. Buyers valued responsive handling on mountain roads and ability to cope with steep grades. The car became popular with rural doctors, salesmen, and farm owners. South Africa's mix of modern cities and remote rural areas, combined with extreme heat, made it another challenging market. Standard established local assembly employing South African workers, building goodwill that translated into sales. Even modest markets proved valuable. Those 405 West German sales in 1950 generated precious foreign currency when Britain desperately needed it. The Vanguard's export success rested on several factors: timing, appearing when Commonwealth nations needed vehicles; right-hand drive understanding of these markets; durability from that wet-liner engine; and dealer networks with parts distribution that rivals neglected. But there was a cultural dimension. Commonwealth buyers in the late 40s and 50s felt strong connections to Britain. They'd fought alongside British forces, consumed British culture, and maintained family ties. A British car represented more than transport, it represented connection to shared heritage. The car's weaknesses were real: inconsistent build quality, handling that never matched continental rivals, styling that aged quickly, and serious corrosion issues in floor pans and sills. But for fleet buyers and Commonwealth motorists needing reliable transport rather than sporting pretensions, these flaws were acceptable. The military connections proved valuable throughout production. The Royal Air Force purchased Vanguard pickups extensively, with Phase 1 and Phase 2 versions serving on bases across Britain and overseas. The Standard Vanguard never earned the affection lavished on the Mini, or admiration given to the Jaguar E-Type. It won't feature in lists of most beautiful or fastest British cars. But the Vanguard was exactly what Britain needed in 1947. A practical, durable, exportable motorcar that could earn foreign currency and keep factory workers employed. Over 350,000 Vanguards crossed British docks, bound for Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, Canada, and dozens of smaller markets. Each represented steel allocated because Standard met export quotas. Each generated foreign exchange Britain used to buy food, fuel, and raw materials. Each demonstrated that British engineering could compete globally during economic crisis. Think about the practical impact. Each exported Vanguard earned hard currency Britain desperately needed. Those earnings paid for wheat from Canada, wool from Australia, and industrial raw materials worldwide. The cumulative effect of hundreds of thousands of cars made genuine difference to Britain's balance of payments during crucial reconstruction years. The Vanguard's story is about resilience, both the cars and Britain's. Standard gambled everything on a clean sheet design when they could have resurrected pre-war models. They navigated government quotas, material shortages, and intense competition. They established dealer networks worldwide and supported them with parts and training. They adapted the design across 3 major iterations and multiple variants. Consider the courage that decision required. In 1945, Standard was building military vehicles and aircraft components. They had no experience designing for export markets, no understanding of Australian conditions or New Zealand preferences. They took enormous financial risks when the company's survival was far from guaranteed. The gamble paid off, but not without struggle. Early quality problems could have killed the project. If Australian buyers had rejected the car, the entire export strategy would have collapsed. But Standard persevered, improving quality, listening to feedback, and adapting to market needs. In Australia particularly, the Vanguard became part of the national story. Those utility versions, with rugged 2-litre engines and spacious cargo beds, helped build a nation. You can still find them at outback stations, suburban garages, and classic car shows, often still wearing working clothes and carrying working scars. For those of you who remember these cars, perhaps your father drove one, or you learned to drive in a Phase 2, or you rode in the back of an RAF pickup. I'd love to hear your stories. Drop a comment below and share your Vanguard memories. What did you think of them? How did they compare to rivals? If you've enjoyed this deep dive into Britain's forgotten export hero, please subscribe and hit that like button. There are more stories like this waiting cars that mattered not because they were fastest or prettiest, but because they did the job when it counted most. The Standard Vanguard may not have the glamorous reputation of more famous contemporaries, but for 16 years it represented British determination to compete on the world stage, no matter the odds. And in those desperate post-war years, that determination made all the difference. Thank you for watching, and until next time, keep the passion for automotive history alive.